We rely on our priests for so much. They consecrate themselves to God and give up a great many things, including marriage.
That is a satanic rule. 1 Timothy 4:1 says that in latter times people will depart from the faith, teaching doctrines of devils. Verse 3 says forbidding to marry is an evil doctrine, along with forbidding to eat meat, which the Catholic Church forbids on Good Friday. This is why you have the pervert scandal of sexually abusive priests.
Because we don't eat meat on certain days? Jesus doesn't say that there's anything wrong with fasting. In fact, he gives instructions on behaviors while doing so in Matthew 6:16-18. In Mark 2:18-20, Jesus says that the time to fast will come again, when he is no longer bodily on the earth. Abstaining from meat on Fridays, or on some Fridays, is not the same thing as a general meat prohibition. I don't see how that would cause sexual abuse.
Well, actually I was mainly referring to the celibacy thing with that.
The sexual abuse scandal was a tragedy and a travesty. Nothing can defend it, and nothing can pretend it wasn't that big of a deal. That being said, consider that it was more of a United States problem than a Catholic one. The abuse has also been found in schools, Protestant churches, and unfortunately any environment in which adults have great access to children. It's not the celibacy restriction. Just imagine. You are a heterosexual male, yes? What if you had taken a vow of celibacy, but you found that you could not stand it anymore? Would you be more likely to molest a young boy or have a secret affair with a grown woman? Do you think that tendencies for pedophilia can be resolved by letting a man take a wife? But regardless, and here is a very important point, the scandal had absolutely zero impact on Catholic theology or teachings.
What about a tree being judged by its fruits?
Well, then you must also judge the numerous good works the church is responsible for. The lives they've helped, and souls they've saved.
Catholic teaching does not save souls.
Well then, let's get back to examining its teachings to determine that.
Teachings such as the satanic rule of forced celibacy for priests?
Celibacy isn't satanic. If it were, then Jesus Christ and Paul would have been satanic. In Matthew 19:12, Christ describes those who have made themselves eunuchs for the kingdom of heaven's sake. In 1 Corinthians 7:6-8, right after Paul describes how husbands and wives should treat each other, he states, "But I speak this by permission, and not of commandment. For I would that all men were even as I myself. But every man hath his proper gift of God, one after this manner, and another after that. I say therefore to the unmarried and widows, it is good for them, if they abide even as I." That cannot be satanic. He goes on in verses 32-35, "He that is unmarried careth for the things that belong to the Lord, how he may please the Lord. But he that is married careth for the things that are of the world, how he may please his wife." There is difference also between a wife and a virgin. The unmarried woman careth for the things of the Lord, that she may be holy both in body and in spirit. But she that is married careth for the things of the world, how she may please her husband. And this I speak for your own profit, not that I may cast a snare upon you, but for that which is comely, and that ye may attend upon the Lord without distraction. Verse 38 concludes, "So then he that giveth her in marriage doeth well, but he that giveth her not in marriage doeth better."
You're leaving out verses. In that same chapter, verse 9, "But if they cannot contain, let them marry, for it is better to marry than to burn." Clearly not everyone is called to this life, so it is wrong to force celibacy.
It's true that Paul didn't want to force celibacy on everyone, and not everyone is called to it. However, not everyone is called to the priesthood either. That's why the discipline exists in most Catholic rites, but not all of them, remember, since priestly celibacy is not a doctrine. The idea is that we want our priests to care for the things that belong to the Lord, not for things that are of the world, not for pleasing his wife and family. The members of their congregations are their children, and the priests are our fathers, which goes back to Paul's writings that we already mentioned. Paul had no human wife, but he had many spiritual children.
Mr. McPopkins didn't say anything about that. He did tell me that I would burn in hell, and that he would pay to get me out of purgatory.
Oh dear. I'm afraid McPopkins was a bit confused on how purgatory works. Let me refer you to the Catholic Catechism, so you know what we believe. From paragraphs 1030 and 1031, all who die in God's grace and friendship, but still imperfectly purified, are indeed assured of their eternal salvation, but after death they undergo purification, so as to achieve the holiness necessary to enter the joy of heaven. The church gives the name purgatory to this final purification of the elect, which is entirely different from the punishment of the damned. The tradition of the church, by reference to certain texts of scripture, speaks of a cleansing fire.
That is a lie. Purgatory does not exist. It is a pagan idea of money-making.
It is not pagan, it has origins with the Jews. We see evidence of prayer for the dead in 2 Maccabees 12:41-46.
Of course you run to the Apocrypha, which is filled with paganism. If any group of Jews actually did that, they were probably mimicking the pagans.
Ha 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 ha.
What's so funny?
I'm sorry. It's just funny, if you know what the Maccabees books are about. The Jews in those books were a group who refused to adapt to their pagan surroundings when Israel was under the influence of the Seleucid Empire, after Alexander the Great conquered that part of the world. Some were killed because they wouldn't fight a battle on the Sabbath.